Yeah.
But I think what you've communicated is that this was transformative for you as a person, as well as making you effective in the world. And I'm going to come back to the effective in the world part. But before we do that, I want to hear from Nick about what challenges you might have encountered as an organizational director when your clients and members began speaking out and being more publicly visible. Did you get resistance from donors or board or?
I must say we drove him crazy. We were always in his office. We had this community member who were like always in there, Nick, we should do this, Nick. So he kind of didn't have a choice because we kind of we fought.
You outnumbered him?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we built a place, and it's evolving always, where that was the point, was to build relationships with people, and for some, it was just being in a drop-in and eating a really good meal, maybe the only meal that they were going to eat that day, and that helped them push back the four walls of their terrible basement apartment. And they got to read the paper and be in a safe place. And then other people like Nadia took it to the max in a way, and you ride the energy in anything, and the energy, if you give people the space to talk about what matters to them, people have a lot to say. And I would say that we've talked about the civic engagement program just now, and we don't have to go into the details of it. It's a 12-week program around political economy and supporting people to speak out, and then they get hired back to do kind of making sure that community members are receiving their entitlements, and there's a whole kind of backdrop to that. But I actually think that every program you run is an opportunity to be political. And I don't mean partisan or I mean just to talk about what a healthy neighborhood needs. And there's no way that a cooking class or a community garden is going to solve hunger. Not a chance. Food bank isn't going to solve hunger. Hey, a community food center is not going to solve hunger. But those programs allow people, when you're cooking, to talk about, hey, what's going on in the neighborhood? Mm-hmm. What does need to change? So it doesn't have to, I think there's an opportunity throughout any kind of work you do to embed a politics and a community mobilizing and organizing into it. You don't have to just have a civic engagement program. I mean, we had that, and as an organization, we backstopped that with money. Like, you can't create change and support people to fight for something, A, if you haven't built a relationship with them, and B, if you don't actually organizationally put your money where your mouth is and put money toward that. I don't just mean in terms of staff people, but also in terms of resources to do what you need to do. So, I mean, I was just in a session prior to this where someone revealed that the budget was $14 million in their organization, and they had one person doing advocacy and no programmatic dollars to do anything else. And yet, one of their key goals was to end hunger. I'm sorry, like, that's not okay. There's a bad flaw going on there. And again, it's probably because you get eaten up, everyone gets eaten up by feeding. Mm-hmm. And it's a big pit to fall into. So in terms of, like, we just created a space where people could be in my office, hell. Like, that's what would happen. And the board understood that. I worked hard to find a board that they weren't wallflowers. They asked tough questions, and you had to bring data, and we had arguments. But at the end of the day, their energy was building an organization that cared deeply about respectful programming and also was in the fight for equality and equity and justice. So you can do that if you want to do that. You don't let a board tell you you can't. You should leave that organization if that's the case.
So is there a victory or two from the civic engagement part of the work you could share?
Can I answer that quickly? Because I mean, Nadia will, she'll get lots of time. But there are no quick victories out there.
Sure.
Like, there's no...
I didn't mean a quick victory,
Yeah.
I meant a quick sharing of
No, but what I mean, I guess I'm jumping on it because, I'll remember Nadia meeting with the Minister of Social Services, and, when you're in a party, and all of a sudden it goes quiet because someone's about to say something really stupid, and or not, could be electrifying, but in this case it was stupid. And the Minister of Social Services that is in charge of social assistance rates in our province of Ontario, which are absolutely abysmally low. You cannot live with any kind of dignity or health on these kinds of entitlements. So we've been fighting very hard for many years to increase social assistance rates in the province, and Nadia has led that. Mike Bolkwell, who's here, there are others, Andrea, who have been key to that fight. But in this meeting, never forget it, the minister everything goes quiet. She goes, the best day of the year is when I take my kids to the supermarket to buy food that I can then donate to the local food bank. And it just went quiet. And Nadia was like, there is no dignity in your kids choosing what my kids should eat. Mm-hmm. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else needed to be said. She didn't increase the social assistance rates. But it's not linear, this stuff. I'm talking to folks, they'll say, well, change can't happen. I'll say, well, the women's right to vote, how'd that go? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. We won that one. The weekend, yeah. Mm-hmm. We won that one, thanks to the labor movement. End of apartheid, civil rights movement, you name it. Change doesn't happen until it does. And we have a theory of change in our organization and the organizations we're building across the country, that you have to build organizations that reflect the future you want to see, that are about health and generosity and equity. And our theory of change is not about government relations, right? There's a lot of food banks that have government relations staff, that kind of clinical, bureaucratic lobbying. We build it in this way, that community members stand in front of ministers or whatever it might be, wherever you can get in the door, to articulate civil society's issues. And that heat, if you can get enough of it, burns the butt of politicians who eventually move on an issue. And if you can find good bureaucrats, that Venn diagram of good bureaucrats, good politicians, and heat from civil society, you put anything in the middle of that, you do enough noise, you get change. And so that's the kind of change we're trying to work on, and it comes from a cooking group, or it comes from a garden, or it comes from a civic engagement program. We can all do it.
So this makes me think about the future and the kind of broader vision. I'd like to know what's on your agenda. I'd like to know, you worked as an advocate at the stop, and you must have acquired skills in that activity that you transfer into other parts of your life. What's on the agenda for you?
So, I started off at the stop. I went to food bank. I did Healthy Beginnings. I did advocacy program. I did Speakers Bureau. Put food in the budget. We got Nick to live on a food bank hamper for a few days. That was
very
awesome.
grumpy.
He was very grumpy. And it's a funny joke because the guys in the drop-in used to call me the pit bull, which I don't look like a pit bull, but that's what they called me because they were like, so I came from this person who was very timid, and they were like, if you want something done, this is your person, because she will go to hell and back for you to make sure that it's happened. And I kind of like had that thing I just got that thing in me, which was not gonna stand for anybody walking over anybody or any injustice, that sometimes it just takes a little thing to fix. It takes a little phone call. It takes someone to say, this is wrong, and according to your policy in section this is what should be happening, and to create change. So I did a lot of this in smaller groups. I did a lot of meeting with ministers and like saying things, and then with Mike in the room and being like, "Oh my God, do you think I should have said that? It just came out. I don't know, I don't know." And then Mike's like, "You're fine." And then having Nick and Jonah and like, because when I get fired up, I just tend to say things. Like I became a talker. That's like part of the default factor of who I've become. And so I went back and I went to school and did social service worker. And I graduated with honors with 3 kids, so people could do it if they have the right supports. And